Hey, this is John Bartlett from Brentwood Growth. Hope you guys are doing okay today. I've got Dave Lewis with me from PipeDreams. Dave, thanks for joining me today.
Thanks, John. Great to be here and appreciate the opportunity.
Sure, man. Where are you calling from?
I live in the Denver area. I'm in a town called Arvada, kind of halfway between Denver and Boulder.
Sounds wonderful, man. Sounds wonderful. It's good quality of life out there, right?
Oh, it's beautiful. Love it here in the Colorado Front Range. Great
Yeah.
outdoor activities, great people. It's awesome.
Well, good. So tell us briefly about your background and a little bit about PipeDreams.
Certainly. So my background is actually the former owner operator myself. So prior to Pipe Dreams, with some partners, I acquired and then ran a local services business here in the Denver area. And then in a past life, long before this, I was an infantry officer in the Army. And I joined Pipe Dreams last year. I lead all of our acquisitions and M&A efforts. We are a home services roll-up. We're focused on residential HVAC, plumbing, and electrical service businesses. We've been at it for about 4 years. We've acquired over 10 companies, and we currently operate under six primary brands.
Well, that's great. Is there a particular part of the country that you guys are focused on?
No, not really. It so happens, just with where we were founded and kind of where we got started, that we bias a little bit more towards the Western United States in our current portfolio. But we're actually under contract right now on a deal in the Mid-Atlantic, actively looking at some opportunities in the Midwest. So we're open to the entire continental U.S. That's, I think, one thing that makes us maybe a little bit different from some of the other buyers in this category out there. We don't have a regional or geographic driven strategy.
Right, right. So when you're looking at businesses, what makes a business appealing or interesting for you guys? What are some of the characteristics that you're looking for in terms of size, in terms of revenue mix, in terms of infrastructure that they built out, maybe in terms of the tech stack, owner dependency? What are some things that are particularly important to Pipe Dreams?
Yeah, so we generally look for businesses that do majority residential work. We're okay with some light commercial, but we're trying to buy businesses that are primarily residential focused. Service and repair. So we like to see little to no new construction exposure. And we really like businesses that have a good long track record, been around in business at least about 10 or more years. Strong reputation in their local market or community and a solid base of customers. Um, and I'd also say, any of the things I'm about to share, I think one thing that sets us apart maybe a little bit is that we also don't have um, hard orthodoxies around any of this. We, I think, are a little bit more flexible in some of the deals we're willing to consider and on how we can structure things and what criteria. So if it's residential or HVAC, plumbing, and electrical, within that, yes, ideally we like a business that has been consistently growing, consistently profitable. Um, we like a strong management team, but again, I wouldn't say any of those things are deal breakers, more just kind of generally things that we like to see.
What size of business is appealing?
We, I think, also can consider businesses that are maybe a little smaller than some of the other buyers in the space. So we generally say our floor, if we're buying a company in a market where we don't currently have a location, is about 4 million in annual sales. And we also have done deals considerably larger to that, but that's kind of the bottom end. And then for tech and acquisitions, or that is, an acquisition that's kind of close to an existing location, we've done deals, and we'll consider things as small as 1 to 3 million a year in annual sales.
So when you think about businesses of that size, if it's $1 million business, it's probably the owner, maybe 4 or 5 employees. If it's $4 million business, maybe they've got, 15 to 16 employees. If it's a larger business, they're going to have more employees. And as businesses grow and scale, obviously the owner needs to build out the org chart, the management team. Are there certain characteristics that you look for in terms of how built out that management team is?
It depends, I think, in part on that owner's own goals
Right,
in the transaction. So we generally say that we don't require owners to stick around long term after a deal closes. We're open to structuring a deal that way if that's something they really want. Um, but I think it is really, really important that owners are honest with themselves and also with buyers about their orientation on that point. And so generally, I think as a buyer, you can accept a little bit more risk on the management team if that owner is staying involved.
right.
Whereas in a situation where they're going to be out of the business entirely within a few weeks or a few months of the transaction, then it becomes more important. What does that next layer of management look like? Is there a general manager in place, or maybe a service manager or install manager who has the capabilities to step up into a role like that?
So,
But we will also bring in someone from the outside to
right.
run the business if needed.
So when you look at the 40 acquisitions that you've done and you sort of group those into categories, you've got some that you've purchased that it might be an owner in their mid 60s and they're looking for a relatively quick transition. You might have some that are in their 50s where they're wanting to sell a piece but stay involved in the business. And there might be younger guys as well. Is that right?
That's right. Yeah. And sorry, just to make sure I've got the numbers right. We've done a little over 10
Sorry.
transactions, not
Sorry.
40.
Sorry.
Hopefully we'll hit the 40 mark here in the not too distant future.
Okay.
But all good, all good. It so happens historically a lot of the transactions we've done were with owners who they wanted to retire, and we tried to set the deal up that way. So deals that were heavier towards upfront cash at close, and where the owner was then going to exit after seeing to an orderly transition. But we also are actively working on and consider opportunities where there's an equity rollover involved, or other components to it.
Right, right. And that sort of gets into the deal structure itself, which I'll get to in a moment. But before we talk about deal structure, and I'm not going to pin you down in terms of valuations and exact formula, but is there a general methodology that you use to determine what you think the fair market value of the business is?
I'd say generally, I think, similar to a lot of other buyers in the space, we look at things in terms of a multiple of earnings, and those multiples tend to go up as the size of the business goes up.
Right,
And then within the multiple range at any particular kind of size band, you might see variation in that range
right,
based on some of the things we've talked about. How solid is the management team? What was the recent revenue and profitability trajectory? Those kinds of things.
right,
Um, there can be situations, at the very small acquisition kind of end of things, where if you're effectively just buying almost like a customer list and a phone
right,
number, we
right,
might try to figure out a valuation that's more just valuing what do we think that customer list is worth, if we're not actually kind of buying a going concern beyond that. But generally, multiple of earnings, with those multiples going up as the size and scale of the business goes up.
right, right. Deal structure. So, the way we sort of think about it, there can be various components of the deal structure itself. There's the headline
Mhm.
number, and then there's the structure that sort of gets everyone to that headline number. There's a cash component. There perhaps can be a note component. There can be an earnout component. There can be a rollover equity component. Do you use three or four of those components to structure the overall value? And how how do you think about the way the deal can be structured or should be structured?
Um, Great question. I'd say the first thing we think about, and probably the most important thing, is trying to really understand what does that owner want and what are their goals.
Right,
Um, and again, I think this is something that, in my experience, it can almost seem like owners have been coached or feel this pressure to tell you they want to stick around for 2, 3+ years. Um, when we ask that question and are getting to know an owner, we genuinely want to understand, is that something they really want, or is it actually they want to go, hang out with their family and go fishing, but they have somehow felt like they have to tell us what they think we want to hear. So if what an owner wants is a deal that doesn't have equity rollover because they want to retire or move on to other things, that's fine with us. So, generally our deals tend to be more towards cash and then an equity rollover component when it makes sense and when it's, something that seller, again, genuinely wants to sign up for. We're not opposed to using seller notes or earnouts. It so happens we haven't had a ton of either of those in our previous deals. And again, not something that we have orthodoxy around, but they can tend to be, they can add complexity to a deal, and certainly simplicity can be valuable in these kinds of negotiations as well.
Explain the concept of rollover equity. How do you explain that to a seller? And if they're thinking about, they're going to sell 70% or 80% or 90% to a group like yours, and they're going to roll 10 to 30% over. How do you explain what that rollover equity actually is? What the whole period of that rollover equity or could be, and then what the ultimate payout monetization of that rollover. How do you explain that concept to sellers?
Yeah, so generally speaking, it just means that some portion of the purchase price is in the form of equity in our parent company. So let's say it's a $10 million deal, 8 million in cash, 2 million in rollover equity. That seller is going to get $8 million in cash the day the deal closes, and sort of get to take some chips off the table, if you will.
Yeah,
And then they're going to get another 2 million in the form of equity in PipeDreams. So they now become a PipeDreams shareholder. It converts into equity and sort of similar um, terms as our existing equity holders, and then as our business grows, hopefully with their now acquired company being part of that, they can enjoy in that upside. I think a lot of folks will call this kind of the second bite at the apple,
yeah,
um, when we have some sort of liquidity event or exit. We're not backed by a single traditional private equity firm, so we don't have some of the same time pressure on our investments. We don't have to exit in a certain number of years, but certainly, our investors and anyone who's rolled equity with us historically, they want to realize a return as well. So, as it makes sense when there's a liquidity event in the future, if that seller rolled equity with us, they'll have an opportunity to see the upside from that.
and is that 3 years? Is that 5 years? Is it 10 years? What's the general time frame that a seller should set sort of their timeline expectations around?
I would be reluctant to put an exact number on it. It's probably at least 3 years.
Right,
Again, we don't have investors where we're on a kind of private equity fund timeline.
right,
We think that allows us to hopefully grow our businesses in a way that's sustainable, build a portfolio of companies and a business that is enduring in value. And then I think we believe that liquidity opportunities will come along the way.
right,
I don't think we're talking 20 years
right,
either,
right.
but probably at least three.
And so if a seller has gotten a couple of offers and the price is similar between those offers and the deal structure is similar between those offers, what are the things that you and Pipe Dreams are doing to allow if he has three offers on the table and it's 10 million, 10 million, 10 million is roughly the same. What are some of the characteristics that you're wanting to point out to him as to as he's comparing these three that Pipe Dreams should move to the top of the list?
Great question. A few things that I would highlight. I think, we really genuinely care about trying to build on that owner's legacy. We don't replace the local brand with a regional or national brand. So we're not kind of rolling up or consolidating. We're going to keep operating under that local company's name. One reason we care so much about trying to find and buy businesses that have great reputations in their local market is that that's, for us, a lot of the value that we're then going to try to go carry forward. We really try to keep that team in place as much as we can and to provide all of those folks opportunities as the business grows. That's
Right.
definitely something I think I get asked a lot about when I'm meeting with sellers, because I think there's a perception out there that you're going to fire all of my staff and replace them with your people, or try to cut as many people as possible to save money. um, we really genuinely want to try to provide great opportunities for those team members as the business grows, and often find that we are putting into place compensation and benefits plans that are at least as good, if not better, than what was there previously when we take over. um, and then I think we really want, again, to figure out what that owner's goals are in a transaction, and then try to meet them where they are. So I think we have a little bit more flexibility in terms of deal structure, but then also hopefully they'll get to see
Right.
whether they rolled equity or not, that business grow under our ownership, and they can be proud of that going into the future.
Cool. Cool. Let's keep walking through the process. So you found a business that you like. You've had some conversations with the seller. You've made an offer. The offer's been accepted. Um, what happens from that point forward?
So once the offer is accepted, generally that comes with, although non-binding, a period of exclusivity for us to conduct some further due diligence. So we have a list that we request of data, pretty standard, on the company's financials, operations, assets. So we'll do some investigation into that. Likely meet with those owners at least a couple of times during that process. Uh, Working with them and the legal counsel involved, generally we'll be drafting all of the key deal documents. But certainly there's a process there of back and forth editing them and getting them finalized. And then in parallel, we are also doing all of our preparation to integrate that company into our
Right.
operations. So we've, I think, maybe more than some acquirers in the space, invested pretty heavily in our centralized infrastructure. And we need to be ready on day one for that company to hit the ground running with all of our back office support and systems, so they can make the most of the value that we bring. So we'll have been working on that during that period as well. And then once the deal closes and the ink dries, we're off to the races, meeting the team and getting things going.
So from the time the offer is accepted until the deal closes, the financial review, the legal review, all the due diligence process, how long does that time generally take?
I would say, generally probably talking about, 60 to 90 days.
Right.
We've done it faster than that. And,
Right.
we want to be moving as quickly as that owner is willing and able. So we've had deals go from literally meeting the owner to close in less than 60 days.
Yeah.
And we've had processes that take a little longer than that, where we get to know an owner and it's maybe a multi-month or even multi-year conversation until they're kind of ready to pull the trigger. But generally, from the moment an offer is signed until close, you know, somewhere between 30 and 90 days. And, we try to move as fast as we can, while making sure that, everyone involved is kind of comfortable with the process.
And at what point does an owner begin to bring his senior management team into the conversation? And then at what point does he announce to the entire company that this transaction is going to take place?
Typically, in my experience, most owners don't want to tell the entire company until things are finalized, which we certainly understand. So that usually happens on day one under the new ownership. There may be cases where either a general manager or several key employees will find out during the course of the diligence process. Certainly that's something that becomes more important if that owner isn't staying involved in the business and we're going to
Right.
be relying on,
Right.
one or two of the existing employees to run the company. We'd like to have an opportunity to get to know that person a little bit as well.
Got it. Got it. So if it's an owner that's completely selling the business and he wants to be out or she wants to be out as quickly as possible, what does that sort of back end transition timeline look like? Is it measured in weeks? Is it measured in months? Is it measured in years?
It depends a little bit on the company, and how dependent on that owner, the business is, how involved they were in the day to day. I'd say typically we're talking around 3 to 6 months,
Right.
but there can be cases where it's faster than that, and there have been times where it's made sense to maybe keep someone around a little bit longer than that. But yeah, I'd say typical is probably give or take 3 months.
So if an owner is selling majority control, but he's continuing to own some equity, he's going to roll some equity and he's going to stay involved in the business. Um, how does his life or her life change going forward after you guys buy the business? Before he's got a whole list of roles and responsibilities and things that he's doing. Does that change much after the deal closes?
It probably changes somewhat. I think, if they are continuing to be the general manager or kind of day-to-day
Right,
operator of that
right,
business,
right.
um, I would suspect that a lot of that day-to-day will feel quite similar.
Mhm.
Um, Having been a business owner myself, uh, I'm sure that emotionally and almost psychologically, the feeling of going from being the 100% or kind of
Right,
primary owner of that business, to not being in that position anymore, can be an adjustment. And this is again, I think, why I kind of keep beating the drum on owners really considering whether that's something they want to sign up for or not, because I think some owners sort of underestimate how that shift is going to feel and what it's going to be like
right,
having someone else, being the kind of final person calling the shots at the end of
right,
the day. We really empower our general managers to run their businesses, but they're going to work collaboratively and closely with our central team. We hope that the value we're adding is a force multiplier for them. Um, but it also is going to mean at the end of the day, there may be certain decisions or things that we want to do that wouldn't have been the decision they would have made when they were running the business themselves or when they were the sole owner of that business. And, again, I think that's something that some owners, if they've been used to being in that position for decades, that can be a bit of an adjustment.
And so you're buying these businesses obviously because you've got intentions of growing the business beyond where that existing owner has been able to take it to. What are some
Mhm.
of the processes and strategies that you're going to put in place that maybe the owner has not invested in or are really ramped up the way you guys think the business has the potential to? What are some things? And then are there other things from a back office support staff that you're going to try to beef up? Are there things in terms of the tech stack? Are there things in terms of recruiting? Obviously you've got plans of doubling the size of the business over a 3 to 5 year period. What are some of the areas that you're going to put emphasis on to accomplish that objective?
Yeah, we take, I'd describe it as a multi-pronged approach. There's probably three main components to it. One is incremental marketing investment. Another, if it fits, is adding service lines. So, taking an HVAC
Right,
business and adding plumbing or vice versa.
right, right,
And then the third is doing additional acquisitions. So, as a couple of examples, we have a business that we own in the central coast of California, HVAC only business when we bought it. We added plumbing. It's now the largest plumbing business in that market as well. We've got another business that we own in the Bay Area of California. It was doing about 6 million when we bought it. I think it'll probably do about 20 million this year, and
Oh,
that's coming, partly from organic growth on the marketing side of
yeah,
things, and then partly from a couple of tuck-in acquisitions. So we're kind of trying to mix all of those things together. And then on the back office side, and that part of your question, um, you know, quite a few different things that we do to try to drive additional efficiency and margin improvement. Certainly, we're hoping to get some scale on equipment and materials and savings on procurement. We generally find sometimes in these businesses that staffing has been a challenge.
yeah,
Generating demand through marketing isn't
yeah,
helpful if you don't have the
yeah,
techs to service
yeah,
it. So we have a full-time recruiter on staff. We try to make
yeah,
sure that we're staffed up to meet that demand. Um, and then we also, I think, often find that a lot of these businesses have either underinvested in marketing or maybe just aren't super comfortable or uncertain of how to ramp that investment in a way that actually comes at a strong ROI. And so, one of, I think, the things we bring to the table is a really rigorous and data-driven approach to, in particular, digital marketing,
right.
making sure we're really understanding that channel level ROI, and it's not this black box where an agency tells you, give me $10,000 a month and don't worry about it, the calls will come. Um, finding opportunities to scale that investment while knowing very clearly, in each channel what those dollars are getting us.
Yeah, that's it can be a black box, and unless you understand how to measure that and hold the marketing agency accountable, and you're measuring the ROI, you could spend a ton of money and not have anything to show for it. So having the knowledge
Absolutely.
and having the capability of monitoring all that is extremely important. This has all been great. So if there are owners out there that are thinking about having conversations like this, what are the couple of things that you would encourage them to really think about to be sure that the business is ready to begin a conversation like this, and they're ready to begin a conversation like this? What are some of the things that they need to be reminded of that maybe they're not paying attention to that are going to matter?
Yeah. So I'd say one is kind of really focusing on doing what you do well. So one thing I have come across occasionally with businesses that are going to market or recently started going down the path of selling is at some point someone told them, oh, buyers want residential service. And so lo and behold, in the 12 months prior to putting that business on the market, they went from 60% commercial revenue to 60% residential revenue.
Right,
Um, and as a buyer, when there's big swings like that, or when things in the business seem really inconsistent from a revenue mix standpoint, that adds additional risk and
right,
uncertainty for
right,
us. So, there are buyers out there who want commercial focused businesses. So I would tell an owner who has a, solid business, but it happens to be commercial, don't try to become a residential service
right,
business
right,
next year and
right,
then think that that's the ticket to a bigger exit. So, focus on doing what you do well. I think another is really aiming for consistency, both in growth and in margins. So, again, another thing I'll commonly run into is business is humming along. It's doing, 5 million a year in annual sales, 10-15% net margins. And then one year they do 7.5 million in annual sales, 25% net margins. And then that business goes and tries to sell off of that, 12-month
right,
period. And
right,
as a buyer, we are going to some degree discount that because it hasn't been shown that that is sustainable over a longer time period. Um, and I think the final thing I'd call out, especially in the size of businesses that we tend to buy, often owners are just, and they're extraordinary hardworking entrepreneurs. They've built these businesses up over years and decades. Um, Almost sometimes to a fault, where there's maybe been some under investment in, or maybe a little bit of a lack of empowering that next level of management and really building that management team. And I think that is often the thing that kind of separates businesses that sort of stay in that, call it very roughly 5 million and below annual sales versus are able to kind of move up into that next tier of revenue. It's, are you able to hire, train, and retain not just good individual contributor employees, but also really good managers that can run the business day to day so you can work more on the business.
Are there things that the owner needs to think about from a personal standpoint? I know sometimes we all get wrapped up in FOMO. We go to a conference or we got a buddy that's in the business and he sold his business and he's playing golf or playing with the grandkids or doing whatever. And we think, well, he did it. I'm a jerk if I don't go do the same thing. And so we sort of feel compelled that we need to do what someone else is doing. Is there something that you would encourage these owners to think about in terms of where they are in life and they're really ready emotionally to sell a piece of the business or sell all of the business, or are there things they need to be sure that they're really ready to take that next step?
Yeah, I think, one we've already talked about, which is if you're going to sign up to stick around and keep running the business under new
Right,
ownership,
right,
I've, really done the soul searching to consider whether that's something that,
right,
you think you would be able to take to.
right,
Um, Another is, having realistic expectations around the value of your business.
right,
Um, I think one thing that's happened in our category with the amount of private equity and just general M&A activity over the last few years is probably in almost every decent sized market, there's one, if not more, really big sale or exit stories.
right,
And so owners hear about those. But just because the guy down the street or across
right,
town sold for $30 million doesn't mean that every single HVAC and plumbing business in that market is worth $30 million. So,
right,
you know, consulting with experts or with trusted advisors, whether it's your accountant or a broker, or, whoever makes sense to have a realistic understanding of what is your business going to be worth, and is that going to meet your needs financially with where you are in your life, or maybe do you need to keep working on the business
right,
for a few more years before you're ready to take that step. And then the final thing I'd say is maybe spending a little bit of time actually considering what it is you're going to do next,
right,
especially if that business has been kind of your life's work and the thing that you've kind of lived and breathed for the last 20, 30, 40 years. What does life look like after that?
right,
And again, I think that can be kind of a disorienting transition for some folks. So
right.
it's easier if you've planned a little bit ahead on how you're going to spend that time.
Those are wise words. Well, listen, this has been great, and we appreciate your time. If someone wants to reach out to you, what's the best way for them to get in touch with you?
I would say email or phone. My email is dave.lewis, Lewis, at pipedreams.com. And I'm happy also to share my phone number and other contact information with you, John, if there's a way to
Yeah,
post that.
and we'll stick that in the show notes here.
Yeah, I mean, they can also, connect with me on LinkedIn, but very responsive on email, phone, text. So we'll make sure that that information is available. And as I mentioned, I think somewhat flexible, maybe more so than some other buyers in the
Right.
category. So
Yeah.
would welcome any outreach and open to conversations with owners of all sizes.
Well, that's great, man. Well, listen, this has been a great conversation, and we thank you very much for your time, and we'll be sure and put your contact details in the show notes here.
Thanks so much. I appreciate
Okay,
it, John.
man.
Have a good one.
Have a good day. Thank you.
All right, take care.
Bye.
Bye.